You spend 3 hours perfecting an email that should take 5 minutes. You rewrite presentations until 3 a.m., convinced they're still not good enough. You've been called a perfectionist your whole life and you wear it like a badge of honor. But what if I told you that what you call perfectionism isn't about excellence at all? What if it's actually fear? Fear so deep, so primal that you'd rather exhaust yourself pursuing impossible standards than face what you're truly capable of. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, understood something most people miss entirely. Perfectionism isn't about being perfect. It's about being safe. Safe from judgment, safe from failure, safe from the terrifying possibility that you might actually be more powerful than you've ever allowed yourself to believe. Today, we're going to strip away the comfortable lie of perfectionism and reveal what's really underneath. The truth might disturb you, but it will also set you free. Because the moment you understand why you're really chasing perfection, you'll finally be able to stop running from your own greatness. Carl Jung understood that what we resist in ourselves doesn't disappear. It goes underground and controls us from the shadows. He called this the shadow, the part of our psyche that contains everything we've deemed unacceptable about ourselves. For the perfectionist, that shadow holds their raw, unfiltered power. Jung saw perfectionism as what he called a negative inflation, an ego defense that masquerades as virtue while actually serving to diminish the self. The perfectionist creates impossible standards not to achieve greatness, but to ensure they never have to face their true capabilities. Because true power is messy, it's unpredictable, it doesn't ask for permission or wait for approval, and that terrifies the perfectionist's ego, which has built its entire identity around control and external validation. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But the perfectionist chooses instead to become who they think they should be, always falling short of an impossible ideal, always safe from the risk of actually succeeding. This isn't pursuit of excellence, it's sophisticated self-sabotage. Meet Elena, a 32-year-old corporate strategy consultant who hasn't missed a deadline in 8 years. Her apartment is a monument to order, books arranged by height, spices alphabetized, emails organized in color-coded folders. She arrives at the office by 7:15 a.m. every day, stays until 8:30 p.m. and has never submitted a report without reviewing it at least 6 times. Everyone calls Elena a perfectionist, and she's built her entire identity around this label. But here's what Elena doesn't tell anyone. She used to paint. Before business school, before the corporate climb, before she learned that practical was more valuable than passionate, Elena spent hours creating abstract art that poured straight from her soul. She was good, not technically perfect, but powerfully expressive in a way that moved people. Her college professor once told her she had dangerous talent, the kind that could reshape how people see the world. That comment terrified her, because dangerous meant unpredictable. Dangerous meant she couldn't control the outcome. So Elena chose safety instead. She chose the corporate track where effort equals results, where perfection can be measured and managed. But late at night, when the spreadsheets are done and the presentations are polished, Elena sometimes finds herself sketching on napkins and then throwing them away before anyone can see. Elena's perfectionism didn't begin with her career, it began with her childhood need to be good enough for a mother who praised only achievement and a father who was emotionally absent unless she excelled. At age 7, Elena learned that love was conditional on performance. She discovered that mistakes meant disappointment, that mediocrity meant invisibility, and that only perfection earned the attention she craved. But Jung understood that childhood adaptations, while necessary for survival, become prisons in adulthood. Elena's perfectionism serves 3 unconscious functions. First, it gives her the illusion of control. If she can perfect every detail, nothing unexpected can hurt her. Second, it provides a socially acceptable excuse for never fully committing to anything. She's always not ready yet, always needing to improve just a little more. Third, and most importantly, it protects her from her greatest fear, that her real power might alienate people, might make her too much, too intense, too threatening. Because Elena's artistic gift isn't just about making pretty pictures, it's about channeling raw truth in a way that forces people to feel things they'd rather avoid. That level of impact terrifies her, so she channels her creative energy into perfecting spreadsheets instead, where her power feels safe and contained. Jung identified perfectionism as a form of what he called active self-diminishment, the unconscious process of making yourself smaller to avoid the responsibility that comes with your true capabilities. Here's how the mechanism works. Elena's perfectionism activates whenever she gets close to her authentic power. The moment she feels that surge of creative energy, that sense of "I could really do something meaningful here," her perfectionist patterns kick in like an immune system fighting off a threat. Suddenly, nothing is good enough. Standards become impossible. The timeline becomes unrealistic. She procrastinates by over-preparing, researches endlessly without starting, revises work that was already excellent into mediocrity. This isn't laziness or incompetence, it's psychological self-protection, because Elena's unconscious mind has calculated that being powerful is more dangerous than being perfect. Power attracts attention, creates responsibility, requires her to stand behind her work without the safety net of "it could be better." Power means people might actually expect something from her, might hold her accountable for the impact she creates. So her psyche sabotages her at the moment of truth, disguising this sabotage as high standards to preserve her self-image while keeping her safely mediocre. Elena's breakthrough came during a client presentation she'd prepared for 3 weeks. She had rehearsed every word, anticipated every question, created backup slides for backup slides. But 15 minutes in, the technology failed. The projector died, her laptop froze, and she stood in front of 12 executives with nothing but her thoughts and a whiteboard. For 30 seconds, Elena felt the familiar panic. This wasn't perfect. This wasn't controlled. This wasn't safe. But then something shifted. Instead of apologizing or scrambling to fix the technology, Elena walked to the whiteboard and began to draw. Not perfect charts or polished diagrams, but raw, intuitive visual representations of her ideas. Her hand moved with the same fluid confidence she once had with paintbrushes. She spoke without notes, connected concepts she'd never connected before, and watched as the room leaned forward with genuine engagement. In that moment, Elena glimpsed what Jung called her authentic function, the unique way she was meant to contribute to the world. It wasn't through perfection, it was through powerful, creative synthesis. After the presentation, the CEO approached her. "That was brilliant. I've never seen anyone think on their feet like that. We need more of whatever that was." Elena realized that her perfectionism hadn't been protecting her gifts, it had been burying them. I want you to pause and examine your own relationship with perfectionism. When you think about the projects you're proudest of, were they the ones you perfected to death, or were they the ones where you took a risk and let your authentic self show through? Think about the moments when you felt most powerful, most alive, most like yourself. Were you being perfect or were you being real? Here's the deeper question Jung would ask. What would you create if you weren't afraid of being powerful? What would you start if you knew it would succeed? What would you share if you knew people would be moved by it? Sometimes we don't realize that our perfectionism isn't protecting us. It's protecting others from the full force of who we could be. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what the world needs less of. Comment below and share one thing you've been perfecting instead of finishing. One project you've been improving instead of launching. Don't perfect your answer, just be honest. Your authenticity might be exactly what someone else needs to see to give themselves permission to stop hiding behind perfectionism too. Jung's approach to healing perfectionism involved what he called active imagination, consciously engaging with the parts of yourself you've been trying to perfect away. Elena began working with a Jung-trained therapist who helped her understand that her perfectionism was actually a form of self-abandonment. Through guided visualization, Elena began to dialogue with her inner critic, the voice that insisted nothing was ever good enough. She discovered that this critic wasn't trying to help her excel, it was trying to keep her small and safe. The healing process involved Elena learning to recognize the difference between healthy standards and perfectionist sabotage. Healthy standards energize you and move you forward. Perfectionist standards exhaust you and keep you stuck. Elena started what she called power practice, deliberately choosing projects where she couldn't be perfect, where she had to rely on her authentic capabilities instead of obsessive preparation. She took an improv class where mistakes were celebrated. She started painting again, giving herself permission to create bad art. Most importantly, she began to redefine success. Instead of measuring herself by how perfectly she executed, she measured herself by how authentically she expressed her unique perspective. 6 months after her technological breakthrough, Elena's entire approach to work and life had shifted. She still produced high-quality work, but the process felt completely different. Instead spending 3 weeks perfecting a presentation, she would spend 1 week deeply understanding the problem and 2 weeks creating something genuinely innovative. Her colleagues noticed the change immediately. Elena's work had become more creative, more insightful, more impactful. She started leading with ideas instead of data, with vision instead of analysis. The CEO began asking for Elena's input on strategic decisions that had nothing to do with her official role because her perspective had become uniquely valuable. Most remarkably, Elena started painting again, not as a hobby or stress relief, but as a serious artistic practice. She joined a local artist collective, began showing her work in small galleries, and discovered that her corporate experience actually enhanced her art. She could express complex social and economic themes in ways that pure artists couldn't. Elena realized that Jung was right. She hadn't been a perfectionist at all. She had been someone afraid of her own creative and intellectual power, using perfectionism as a sophisticated hiding mechanism. Now, instead of perfecting her work to death, she completed it with light. Elena's story reflects a pattern Jung observed throughout his clinical work. Perfectionism is rarely about perfection. It's usually about power avoidance. This manifests differently for everyone. The writer who endlessly edits the first chapter instead of writing the book, the entrepreneur who researches for years instead of launching, the artist who practices technique obsessively but never creates original work, the speaker who over-prepares presentations until all authenticity is polished away. Jung understood that in our culture, we're taught to fear our own power more than our own failure. Power brings responsibility, visibility, the possibility of real impact, and real criticism. It's much safer to be a recovering perfectionist than a practicing powerful person, but Jung also saw that this fear of power doesn't just diminish individuals, it impoverishes the collective. When people hide their gifts behind perfectionism, the world loses access to innovations, art, solutions, and perspectives that could change everything. The perfectionist believes they're protecting the world from their imperfections, but they're actually depriving the world of their unique contributions. Jung's work suggests that embracing your authentic power isn't selfish, it's your responsibility to the collective unconscious, your contribution to the evolution of human consciousness. Learning to distinguish between healthy standards and perfectionist sabotage requires constant self-awareness. Elena still catches herself falling into old patterns, especially during high-stress periods or when facing new challenges where her competence isn't established. The difference now is that she recognizes the pattern as information about her internal state, rather than truth about external requirements. Elena developed what she calls her power check. When she feels the familiar perfectionist anxiety rising, she asks herself, am I trying to make this better, or am I trying to avoid being powerful? This simple question reveals whether her standards are serving authentic excellence or hidden fear. The goal isn't to eliminate all standards or become careless with quality. Jung's individuation process involves integrating opposites, not choosing one over the other. Elena learned to channel her perfectionist tendencies toward process improvement and creative refinement, while releasing the need for external validation and fear-based control. She still cares about quality, but she's no longer willing to sacrifice authenticity for perfection, impact for safety, or power for approval. Here's what Jung understood that most people never realize. Your perfectionism isn't protecting your reputation, it's protecting others from your full power. And that's exactly the opposite of what the world needs. The world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more powerful people. People who are willing to create imperfectly, to lead authentically, to risk being criticized for being too much rather than praised for being safely mediocre. Your perfectionism is a sophisticated form of self-abandonment disguised as self-improvement. Every time you delay launching because it's not ready yet, every time you over-prepare because you need to be sure, every time you edit the life out of something because it could be better, you're not serving excellence, you're serving fear. Starting today, I challenge you to practice what Jung called authentic function, showing up as your actual self rather than your perfected self. Choose one project you've been perfecting and launch it imperfectly. Choose one area where you've been hiding your power and let it show. Choose courage over comfort, authenticity over approval, impact over safety. In the comments below, complete this sentence. I'm ready to stop perfecting and start. Don't perfect your answer. Just be real. Because the world doesn't need another perfect. It needs the irreplaceable, imperfect, powerfully authentic you. Subscribe if you're ready to explore more about Jung's insights into authentic living and the courage to be who you really are. Your power is not a problem to be perfected, it's a gift to be shared.